That single detail changes what this experiment actually demonstrates about you. It isn't proof that power flips some hidden switch inside anyone handed a uniform. It's something closer to this. People will follow a script with disturbing speed when an authority figure makes that script feel expected, legitimate, and shared by everyone else in the room. This idea lines up almost perfectly with an experiment from 10 years earlier. In the early 1960s, a researcher named Stanley Milgram asked ordinary volunteers to administer what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to a stranger in another room, simply because a calm man in a lab coat told them the experiment required it. Most kept going far past the point of obvious distress in the other room, well past pleading and cries to stop. Milgram's conclusion wasn't that people are secretly cruel underneath. It was that people defer to authority with frightening speed, especially the moment responsibility for the outcome starts to feel like it belongs to someone else. The person giving the instructions, not the person carrying them out. Power on its own doesn't manufacture cruelty out of nothing. Expectation does almost all of the heavy lifting. A role handed to you by someone you trust, combined with the quiet sense that everyone around you accepts that role as legitimate and normal, can move your behavior faster than any personal flaw ever could. So, is the lesson simply that anyone in any system will turn cruel under the right pressure? So, is the final lesson simply that anyone in any system will turn cruel under the right amount of pressure? Not quite. In 2002, two psychologists, Alex Haslam and Steve Reicher, tried to recreate the Stanford setup for a BBC documentary, this time recorded openly from start to finish and analyzed far more rigorously than the original ever was. They found something almost the opposite of the famous story. The guards in their version didn't slide naturally into tyranny at all. Many of them felt visibly uncomfortable holding power over the prisoners and actively avoided using it. The prisoners, instead of becoming passive and broken the way the original story claimed, banded together and built a shared sense of identity as a group resisting the system around them. Eventually, it was the guards' side of the experiment that collapsed under the strain, not the prisoners. Haslam and Riker's explanation reframed the entire field around one idea. People don't automatically become cruel just because a uniform handed them power. People act according to which group they feel they belong to and what they believe that group expects of them in that moment. Hand someone a role and let them absorb the unspoken message that cruelty is simply how that role is supposed to work, and many will follow the script without ever consciously deciding to. Hand someone the exact same role without that surrounding expectation, and the outcome can look almost nothing alike. This is the part that gets left out of nearly every retelling of the Stanford story. It was never really a story about power corrupting ordinary people on its own. It was a story about how powerfully a role once handed to you by someone with authority can start writing your behavior before you've consciously chosen anything at all. Think back to that group chat. The moment you became the admin, nobody handed you a script written out in words, but you already had a sense of what an admin is supposed to do. Enforce rules, police behavior. Be a little less forgiving than you were the day before, simply because the role seemed to call for it. Nobody coached you the way Zimbardo's staff coached those guards in the basement. You didn't need it. You already carried the script in your head, absorbed quietly from every authority figure you've ever watched since childhood, every teacher, every manager, every moderator whose behavior taught you what being in charge is supposed to sound like. This is happening constantly in places far smaller and far less dramatic than a fake prison. A new manager becomes noticeably stricter within a week of the promotion, not because ambition revealed a controlling streak that was hiding all along, but because every manager they've ever had modeled what being in charge looks like, and their brains simply reached for the nearest available script. A referee, a substitute teacher, a volunteer briefly left in charge of a classroom, a customer service worker handed a name tag and a tiny bit of leverage over a complaint. All step into roles with invisible expectations already attached, written by culture long before any of them ever showed up for the job.